listening to the song Mysterious Signals from the album The Dark Surf Experience. The band is Los Twangheads, and you can find them on Bandcamp at lostwangheads.bandcamp.com, or follow the link in the show notes over at monsterkidradio.net, which just so happens to be the website for this podcast, Monster Kid Radio, where we celebrate the classic and sometimes the not-so-classic genre cinema of yesteryear. I'm your host, writer, and producer, Derek M. Cook. I'm excited to be back again. Oh, wow. It has been a journey the past several months. Monster Kid Radio has been going through a little bit of a, I don't want to say hiatus, but Steve Turek has been manning the reins. He's been rocking it, doing these guest spots for us, being the guest host, Joan Rivers, so to speak, and just filling in while I have been dealing with either being gone in Kuwait or getting used to being back from Kuwait, that sort of thing. There are so many stories to tell about what happened in Kuwait, and I'm going to save most of them for the book I'm writing, but I will tell you at some point, I have some stories to tell about opening the region's first permanent haunted house attraction in the country of Kuwait with my wife, Beth. It was an amazing experience, one that, man, I would love to have another similar experience with her, just several. So, you know what? I just want to travel the world and do haunted house stuff with my wife. But until that happens, we've got some Monster Kid Radio podcasting to do. So I'm back. We are back to a weekly schedule. And to kick off this next round of Monster Kid Radio, I wanted to do something big. I wanted to do something fun. And I wanted to do something exciting. And that's why we have a special guest this week. I am going to welcome to the show Anastasia Elfman. She is an actress, a writer, a performer, a dancer, and she's got a movie that she's touring with right now. She's going to tell you all about Bloody Bridget, what they're doing, and who her idol is. And I'm not going to play coy here because you've read the show notes. You already know. She loves Lon Chaney Sr. We're going to talk about Lon Chaney Sr. with Anastasia, as well as Bloody Bridget and a few other things later on in this episode. Of course, it would not be an episode of Monster Kid Radio if we did not have all the amazing segments that get sent in. We do have Kenny's look at Famous Monsters of Filmland, and we have Mark Matzke's Beta Capsule review, where he is breaking down episode by episode every episode of every Ultraman series. He is still working his way through the Return of Ultraman, and, well, that means we're still working our way through the Return of Ultraman, and he's going to help us with that.
Have something you'd like to share with Monster Kid Radio? You can email the podcast at monsterkidradio@gmail.com, or you can call and leave a voicemail at 360-524-2484. Here's some listener feedback now.
We received an email from listener Carlos. He says, "Yesterday, I listened to your podcast, episode 651. This is the episode about the German science fiction show that Mark Holmes and Steve Turek talked about. It translates to Space Patrol: The Fantastic Adventures of the Spaceship Orion." Anyway, he continues, "I was very surprised. The comments were so positive and the info was correct. I've never heard a review like this. I am German and did see the series when I was 10. After so many years, we still have a nice community and conventions every 2 years." And then he provides a link to a Facebook group, as well as, I think, a convention page. So I'll make sure there's links to that in the show notes as well. If you need any further information or files, just ask. My English is quite limited, but we also may talk if you like. And then he continues, "While listening to the cast, I could have commented and talked to you for hours. There are so many details. Let me talk about the frogs." Okay, and I'm going to try to say the word in German here. The German word Frösche, plural, is often used to name a person as a stupid one. You know, a frog stays in moldy heated water. So when our two heroes on M74 called the Frösche, they just needed something to break or relax the very strong situation. It was not a naming at that moment. In the reports, they made up the name frogs from this joke. Not many Germans did speak English in 1966, so it's just a handy short naming. But there is more background. The special effects department intended to create a mechanical alien. One version was a man in a costume with a big frog-like head. Maybe there was a hint in the script that they followed. But they didn't like the result and dropped the idea. The actual visible frog is made with optical tricks. First, they used a rotating cylinder with a glittering surface, filmed it twice on the same negative with opposite rotations. Then a man fully covered in black fabric was filmed in front of the white background, while they used a lens to limit or dim the silhouette. The black parts became glitter, the white parts became M74. I am curious about your coming podcast about episodes 4 through 7, signed Carlos. I will be sending this email off to Steve Turek and Mark Holmes, and good news, even though I'm back in the driver's seat here at Monster Kid Radio and kind of running things again, Steve did say that he and Mark did talk about coming back to do future episodes of this particular show, which I think is great. I would love to have them back and do the entire run. So, stay tuned. We will have episodes 4 through 7 and the rest of the series as well covered here on future episodes of Monster Kid Radio. But that's going to happen down the line. To get to those episodes, you got to get through this episode first, which will be a delight because we've got Anastasia in the wings, we've got Kenny's look at Famous Monsters of Filmland, and Mark Matzke's Beta Capsule review coming up right now.
One never knows what lurks in the Chamber of Horrors.
The beast loomed over her. It grinned down at Nina, fangs dripping, clouds of hot breath billowing white in the moonlight. Its eyes blazed bright red. Nina felt the heat of the thing's body burning into her. Its reek like decaying meat made her retch. She wanted to get to her feet, wanted to run, but fear held her tight in its grip. She gazed up at the monster, paralyzed. A low growl like the purr of a hungry cat emanated from the creature's massive throat. To Nina, the werewolf almost seemed to be smiling. She screamed. Opal Cushing, London, England, that same night. Opal Celine Cushing sat bolt upright in bed, screaming. Her eyes shot wide, her heart pounded in terror. Sweat poured down her 18-year-old body. She looked around, frantic. Her sister, who shared the same bed, appeared beside her in an instant. "What is it?" Topaz asked. "Opal, what's wrong?" "He killed me," Opal wailed. "He killed me, I'm dead!"
Dr. Cushing's Chamber of Horrors, a classic Monster Alley novel by Stephen D. Sullivan. Available now at Amazon and other fine retailers.
Yes, Lon Chaney was all of these. The Hunchback of Notre Dame, the Miracle Man, the Phantom of the Opera. The world, fascinated and thrilled, called him the Man of 1,000 Faces. But what was the secret Lon Chaney hid behind his 1,000 faces? What was the mystery in his life? Now, for the first time, the true story, torn from his heart, comes to the screen. Starring James Cagney, magnificent as the fabulous Lon Chaney, master of the grotesque, the weird, the strange. And Academy Award-winning Dorothy Malone and lovely Jane Greer as the two women who made his life more astounding, more touching than any of his unforgettable roles.
I'll come to see you every week. Every week. I promise you.
You had me fired. Damn you! Damn you! Damn you!
Who are you?
I'm from the collection agency. I've come to collect my wife.
Live from the Land of Light in Nebula M78, home of the mighty Ultra Heroes, it's Monster Kid Radio's Beta Capsule Review. Return of Ultraman, Episode 45, Assassinate Hideki Go. Original air date February 28, 1972. Monster Attack Team and Ultraman engage in battle with rat monster Robonazu, which is in the process of blowing up an oil refinery. Ultraman prevails, but not without being wounded. The upper arm injury carries over to Go, and it's diagnosed as rat bite disease. Go's doctor warns him to avoid exercise of any kind, which means his ski trip is officially canceled. Meanwhile, the airplane Go would have been on explodes in mid-flight. The assassination attempt was the work of a childlike alien, Erica, who assimilates as a grade school student, befriending none other than Jiro Sakata. She gives him the gift of a fountain pen, which turns out to be the type of time bomb she used to destroy the plane. Jiro and Go narrowly escape the explosion, sending MAT on the trail of Erica. Locating the girl, Go shoots off her headband, and MAT scientists place her under hypnosis. In that state, she reveals that she's under the control of alien Messi, with the headband acting as a control device. As she awakens from the procedure, an unexplained force places the headband back on Erica and she attacks the doctor. Alien Messi manipulates Erica and the doctor, using them to inject Go with an anesthetic. The alien then blasts Go with a green ray before growing to full kaiju size. MAT launches an assault on the giant invader, but Messi shoots them down. Their only hope is an arrival from Ultraman, but a drugged-up Go still lies under a pile of rubble. Assassinate Hideki Go is inventively structured, beginning with the type of monster battle viewers are used to seeing at the end of the show, effectively featuring two major fight scenes with Ultraman involved in both. The episode flirts with the idea of exposing Go's secret identity as MAT tries to figure out why he would be the assassin's target, but that dramatic point is never stressed, only accented with Captain Ibuki's later comment that Go is somehow an indestructible man. Those with an ear for the soundscape of Toho and Tsuburaya Productions will no doubt pick up on an amusing choice made for Alien Messi. When the extraterrestrial grows to monster height, he growls with the voice of Kong from 1962's King Kong vs. Godzilla. The juxtaposition is both odd and fun, which also works as a general description of this, Return of Ultraman's 45th episode. For Monster Kid Radio's Beta Capsule Review, this is Mark Matzke reporting.
All you've ever wanted in entertainment in one superb show. Here is matchless story, suspenseful, terrifying, never so thrillingly presented. Here in breathtaking Technicolor is superb spectacle and splendor and romance. Here is a chorus of 100 voices, a ballet of 100 dancers, a cast of 1,000, starring Nelson Eddy in his most vigorous performance, lovely Susanna Foster, and Claude Rains in the most coveted role of the year as the Phantom of the Opera.
Come if you dare within these walls. On stage is color, beauty, and light, but in the shadows lurks a monstrous evil. Terror haunts these dusty corridors. Murder waits its call in the dressing rooms. And on cue, death makes his entrance. They have no right to love and happiness, for this beautiful young girl is tangled in a web of terror. The Phantom of the Opera. A hideous echo of a night of agony and horror. A night that must be avenged, even from beyond the grave.
Hello there, Monster Kid Radio heads. This is Kenny with a look at Famous Monsters of Filmland. Today we will be talking about the classic silent star Lon Chaney Sr. Chaney was the first patron saint of Famous Monsters, and his phantom would grace a majority of issues as the official symbol of FM. It all started with issue 1 in 1958, with this write-up found in an article entitled Alice in Monsterland. Let's hear what Forey had to say about the Man of 1,000 Faces. Lon Chaney, in the words of Jimmy Durante, had a million of them. Endless different characterizations. From 1913 to 1930, he appeared in the fantastic total of approximately 150 films. In these, his appearances varied so widely that no one ever knew what he was going to look like next, and the popular saying of the time became, "Look out, don't step on it, it may be Lon Chaney." While Paris Sleeps presented him as a mad scientist. London After Midnight cast him in the role of a human vampire with a fuzzy shock of white hair, a pair of bulging eyes, and a mouthful of razor-sharp teeth. Black cape and top hat completed the effect. The Miracle Man made Chaney famous overnight in his contorted role as Frog, the fake cripple, whose paralyzed limbs were miraculously cured in the climax of the picture. The Penalty presented Chaney without any legs at all, this effect being painfully created by his padding his knees with leather and walking on them. For this purpose, he had a harness especially constructed to constrict his legs, which were bent up behind him. The Road to Mandalay cast Chaney as a semi-blind man. He achieved this effect by covering one eyeball with a coating of white collodon to give the impression of a cataract. Treasure Island saw him blind again, this time as the pirate in Robert Louis Stevenson's classic. A Blind Bargain gave 2 Cheneys for the price of 1, Mad Scientist and Ape Man. The Monster saw him once again cast as a mad scientist. The Unholy Three demonstrated his versatility, for within the same picture he played the dual role of a sideshow ventriloquist and an old woman. Mr. Wu, Outside the Law, and Bits of Life were all Oriental roles. The Hunchback of Notre Dame, one of his 2 top characterizations, was one of the most elaborate and painful. Chaney literally threw himself into the soul of Quasimodo, the demented bell ringer of the Parisian church. The rubber hump attached to his back weighed him down with 70 pounds. In front, he wore a breastplate similar to the pads, including shoulder, of football players. A light leather harness joined breastplate and backplate in such a fashion that Chaney could not have stood erect even had he tried. Over all this, he wore a rubber suit, tinted the color of human flesh, and with animal hair affixed. Modeler's putty was worked into his face, misshaping it, and a set of false teeth over his own gave him a wicked fanged appearance. A matted wig of filthy hair completed his guise, which he donned daily for the better part of 12 weeks. The Phantom of the Opera was, of course, Chaney's crowning achievement. Many people walk the world today who were frightened out of a year's growth by the paralyzing sight of the Phantom's face. As the author, Gaston Leroux, described this character, the Phantom was a masterful but mad musician, whose face was so hideous that he was forced to haunt the innermost depths of the Paris Opera. To achieve this pinnacle of horror, Chaney spared himself no torture. Witches on the rack in Inquisition times may have confessed to consorting with the devil, with the application of less pain than Chaney deliberately subjected himself to for his art. As the Phantom, Chaney inserted a device into his nose that caused his nostrils to flare. By pushing up the end of his nose, he created a startling effect. The corners of his mouth were drawn back by small prongs that must have hurt like fishhooks. Celluloid discs in his mouth distorted his cheekbones. The height of his head was built up into an egg-shaped dome with a scraggle of hair. Deep dark circles were blackened under his wild, staring eyes. To a whole generation of horror lovers, Lon Chaney as the Phantom of the Opera was the most horrifying thing imaginable. When talking motion pictures were born, Chaney remade his hit, The Unholy Three, this time adding vocal tricks to his impersonation of the elderly lady. Then, in 1930, Lon Chaney, age 44, died. and an era of wonderful horror died with him. The one-man monster show was gone, but his memory was enshrined by his millions of fans and lives on to this day.
Here is the lusty, stormy Paris of the Middle Ages, the Paris underworld of thieves and beggars, made immortal by Victor Hugo's magnificent novel, a Paris enslaved by superstition and black magic. Against this turbulent background is set the fascinating story of Esmeralda, the fiery gypsy dancer who bewitched the hearts of all men.
If you touch me, I'll kill you.
The captain of the guards, who forgot his noble birth.
I love you.
For a night?
For 1,000 nights.
The alchemist, whose bitter jealousy could destroy her and every man she inflamed.
You wanted me to die. Why? You tried to kill him. Why? What do you want?
But the strangest victim of her beauty was Quasimodo, the hunchback of Notre Dame. New spectacular production of Victor Hugo's spine-chilling masterpiece, filmed on the spot in Paris.
Monster Kid Radio listeners, I'm thrilled to have somebody on the show that I actually wanted to have on the show months ago, but then I did the whole Kuwait thing, and they've been busy touring with their show and all that, so I'm so grateful that Anastasia Elfman has taken some time out of her busy schedule promoting and touring with Bloody Bridget to appear here on Monster Kid Radio. Anastasia, welcome to the show.
Hello, thanks for having me.
You are an actor, a writer, a performer, a dancer. Would you consider yourself a monster kid?
Definitely.
Yeah?
A huge horror geek obsession, everything.
And I want our listeners to have a chance to get to know you a little bit. And I'm going to break out something that we used to do on the show. Longtime listeners know that I have a game that I call the Classic Five. I've got a deck of cards here, and each one of these cards has a this or that, which movie do you prefer style question. It's all about classic monster movies. There are no wrong answers. I'm going to shuffle the deck, and I'm going to give Anastasia a chance to play the Classic Five with us here so we can get to know her just a little bit better. What do you think?
Okay.
Okay, like I said, no wrong answers, okay?
We'll find out.
Question number one here. What is your favorite classic monster movie sequel?
Bride of Frankenstein, yeah. There we go.
Bride? Okay.
Yeah.
It's a good one. It's a good one.
Sorry, I have severe dyslexia, so
oh no,
about these things, it's
All right, well, how about this one? Card number two. What's your favorite Abbott and Costello meet monster movie? So they did Frankenstein, The Invisible Man, The Mummy.
Well, let's do Frankenstein.
Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein.
Yeah, let's just keep it on brand.
There we go. There we go. How about card number three? What's your favorite Ed Wood film?
Oh, man.
We got Plan 9 from Outer Space. You got Bride of the Monster, Glen or Glenda.
Well, probably the first one.
Plan 9. That's a pretty popular one. And I think it's a great film. I know everybody says it's the worst film ever made, but I disagree. I love it. How are you on Boris Karloff?
I'm not
have a favorite Boris Karloff film.
See, if you were to say Lon Chaney Sr., I could tell you.
Oh, see? Foreshadowing. We're going to get to Lon Chaney.
Oh, no, I'm giving too much away.
People have read the show notes. They know what we're going to talk about.
I don't know. Dealer's choice.
Dealer's choice. Well, the last card that I'm going to draw here. Who else do you want to see play Dracula? That hasn't had a chance to play Dracula yet. Who could or should play Dracula? Or should have or could have played Dracula? Maybe Lon Chaney Sr.?
Well, yeah, but are people who aren't around part of the options?
Why not?
He was supposed to. He was actually, he was being courted by the studios and everything to do actually all of the monsters. So he probably would have played each and every one of them. He had a terrific track record.
He really did. And I'll admit that I actually loaded the deck so that the last question was that one because I wanted to segue into Lon Chaney Sr. for that very reason. We haven't talked about Lon Chaney Sr. on the show in quite some time, and I don't know why we don't. He's one of the patron saints of all of Monster Kiddom. He's done so much. He's so important to the kind of movies that we like. When did you first discover Lon Chaney Sr.?
I believe, this is like a child memories, but I believe my first horror film was his 1925 Phantom of the Opera. So that was my first exposure, which is like such a classic and wonderful film. And he just makes it totally, most people think of Phantom of the Opera as like some romantic musical, but then when you actually watch the film, it's so terrifying. Especially for audiences back then. It had to have been radical. And then just all of the work that they did to keep his phantom makeup secret. Like he would ride into the studios with like a human looking face mask to cover his makeup that he did at home. And nobody except for the people in the scenes got to see it before, it went and was released. So that I thought, that's wonderful.
So did you become a fan of Lon Chaney Sr. before you realized you shared a birthday with him?
Probably. I don't think I put that together until like later when it just became like a super obsession. He's my idol, and I've actually kind of modeled my life, like personal and career-wise, and like work ethic after him, doing my own effects, makeup, and dealing with practical. I did practical effects professionally for over a decade. And grew up in the theater. I'm classically trained in ballet since I was 3. So like we both had a very vaudeville-esque, showbiz kind of performance upbringing. So I don't know. I just feel he's always felt very like at home to me. And he grew up dealing with like having to overcome some stuff with both of his parents were deaf mutes. And growing up with that, and that made him very physical and doing the pantomiming. And like I said before, I have severe dyslexia. And so dance has always been a real game changer opener for me to express myself in that way. And I'm very like physical and, I do a lot of physical comedy and stuff too. So I don't know, I feel like our paths are very similar. And I hope to one day do as much like iconic work as he did,
Sure. So you said Phantom was probably the first one. Is that the one that's had the most impact on you as a performer?
Every project that I take on comes with needs new inspirations, if that makes sense. And so it just like depends on like what I need, but I don't know. I think all of his various degrees of all of his work has like greatly inspired me,
Mm-hmm. I was looking at your filmography, and before the one that you're currently touring with right now, a couple of years ago, you did Aliens, Clowns, and Geeks, and you have 3 or 4 roles in that one. Did you find yourself having to tap into that Chaney kind of approach to play multiple characters?
Yeah. Well, yeah. All of the characters were like dramatically different. I was a nun. I was like a circus, like floozy, like sideshow kind of freak floozy. It was nuts. I was like kind of like a ditzy blonde, which was fun to play. I don't know. I did like a stunts. I was a evil clown alien. My husband wrote and directed it, and so I was I probably did like 5 or 6 different characters, and plus with my background, I did like the second unit costumes, props,
oh, wow,
and makeup for all the second unit stuff, and then I did stunts as well. So like I do everything.
Wow. Okay. So that I didn't know that you did some of the stunt work as well, because that's something Lon Chaney did, and the studios would never let anybody do that now unless your name is Tom Cruise, to do your own stunt work and that sort of thing. So that's just amazing that you've kind of modeled not just the acting, but some of the other things that he did as well. 'Cause back then, when he was making movies, it was all the Wild West. You do whatever you need to do to get the picture done.
No, completely. That's also such like, and when I say like, I feel like I so resonate with him. It's that like theater mentality of the show must go on. We have to work together and get the show up and running no matter what. Like I grew up doing ballet, so I've done many performances on point with broken toes, and you have to smile through it and pretend like everything's fine, and the show must go on. So yeah, completely. And he suffered for his art with his makeups. He bound himself. He gave himself crazy injuries that he had for, the rest of his life. There was like an eye issue from Hunchback. There was a movie where he like was limbless and he like totally bound himself, and that created some forever leg problems for him. And obviously like Hunchback with the, carrying like 60 pounds of, he wanted to really embody and feel the character, which I totally understand. Also, it's like what you were saying, it was the Wild West. There was no, God, what's the term? I'm totally blanking. Anyways, I'll come back to that.
That's fine. Yeah, that's fine. Editing.
Yes, thank you.
We've mentioned Phantom. You mentioned Hunchback. If you had to say there's like one or two iconic Lon Chaney films for you, which are your go-tos?
I mean, I love Phantom. I love everything about it. I hate Christina. Like, he's insane. This man who is living in the basement that, like, and he wants to help your career and make sure that you're the diva, the star of the show, and you're gonna like two-time him with that other guy who's not helping you at all. Like, at least he got you to be the star, and then he brings her down to his like gorgeous lair, and like 5 minutes in gives her one rule: don't take off my mask. And what does she do? She takes off the mask. Insane.
No.
Boo. So I would say Phantom. And also he was a dancer as well. And he started out as a dancer and a comedian. And so you can totally see that as a dancer. It's like when you watch his shadow play and the like hand movements that he does and the pointing when he's like throwing the letters, it's so delicious to watch. I just love it. I'll like replay that and like try to like, mimic that with, I like inserting little like Easter eggs into our films. So I try to mimic certain things or like put little Easter eggs in the film. But anyways, so I would say Phantom, amazing. And then I really love the original Unholy Three. I think it's so wonderful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not so much the talkie?
No. I like the original.
I'm with you there. And I know it's hard because the talkie's the only time we ever hear his voice, but...
Yes, I mean, there was so much scandal over that too. Like, how could that be his voice? He had to like sign like an affidavit or something like that. Like, I make all of these voices.
It's amazing to me whenever I go back and watch any silent film to begin with, because it's such a different way of telling stories on film. I've watched a lot of movies. I'm a huge movie fan. You are a huge movie fan. And when you couldn't talk, just the way the body language is so much more exaggerated. And I know sometimes people play it up for comedic effect, but that's really what the style was for those films. And you're right about Lon or Chaney's body movement and language. You can see that he had that kind of dance background and the pantomime and the way he was able to express so much with just his hands or the way he held his shoulders or the way he walked. It's quite fascinating to me to watch these movies. And I hadn't thought about the Unholy Three in a while. I don't know why. It's a great film. So I think you've just helped me figure out what I'm going to watch later tonight.
Yes, please do. I mean, back to what you were saying, just his shadow alone conveys so much emotion. Like, not even seeing him, just watching his shadow in Phantom of the Opera. Like, you got the whole story right there. And I should have said before, the control of his like body is insane. What he can convey, the pantomiming, all of that is just so radical.
Mm-hmm. It's very, very different. And when you think about all the stunt work that he used to do as well, I'll have to admit that I was kind of late coming to Lon Chaney Sr. fandom. I think probably keyed into him when I watched a documentary about Tom Savini, and he mentioned Lon Chaney Sr., and that sent me on my path to learn more about the man and the fact that he was doing his own stunt work, on Hunchback, kind of climbing down the castle front and all that. It just blows my mind that we not only did somebody do that, but we've got film showing somebody doing that, and it's been preserved so well, which brings me to my next question. How heartbroken are you that London After Midnight is nowhere to be found?
Oh my God, so heartbroken. I mean, along with everybody else who wants to like see that come out of somebody's basement or attic, you know, that we've lost such an iconic film, you know, just the time, and we only have these like stills, you know, it makes me so sad.
I still have hope. I guess they just recently found like a 100-year-old plus Clairbeau film somewhere in a parking lot somewhere not too long ago. So I still have hope that somewhere it's going to turn up. I don't know. I would love to see it before, well, I'm no longer around.
I always worry that something like somebody doesn't understand, you know, like classic films or something like that. And it's like, oh, whatever. And then it just goes to the dump and then it's forever lost. I always worry about those things. There's nothing that we can, you know.
Somebody out there, if you've got to lead them.
Private collector probably has something, you know, or somebody's like great grandma. I don't know.
Somebody's got to have it somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, there's got to be, or like in an old like cinema, like there's got to be some basement that they haven't checked out all the way through in like decades. Like, come on, let's get it together.
Well, the story of how the Edison Frankenstein film was found was just like that. It was some collector who happened to have it, and he would pull it out once a year and show it to the kids in the neighborhood. And then when he passed away, his kids kind of knew what they had, but eventually made a deal so it can come be released, which we now have, which is great. Just hope that somebody does have London After Midnight someday. It would be amazing to see, because that makeup design with all the jagged teeth.
All of it, and then like gluing his eyelids down, like that's insane.
Yeah.
The whole look is so wonderful, and then the way that he like crouches over. I've actually heard that, well, I don't know how true it is, but there was like this rumor that like Groucho Marx watched that film and patterned his walk from Lon Sr. I mean, I don't know because I don't have any reference, but I'll take it.
Wow. Okay, now that I've not heard, but yeah, I'll take that too.
Yeah, I'm obsessed.
Yeah.
It's showing, I hope.
No, you know what? That's what Monster Kid Radio is about, is the fandom of these movies and the people who made these movies. When it comes to all things Lon Chaney Sr., I'm assuming you've seen the James Cagney film, Man of a Thousand Faces. Yeah, I was going to ask you what your thoughts were on it. I'm kind of lukewarm on it myself.
Did you feel my thoughts on it? Yeah, I mean, like, it's kind of like how I feel with horror, like new horror films coming out. Even if I don't love them, I'm just happy that they're getting made and that they're being released and things like that. So it's like, in a way, I'm happy that was made, and maybe it exposes somebody who might not have the adventurous spirit to go hunting on their own, and maybe even a small fragment of that will like inspire them to dig deeper on like the true history and everything. I mean, I believe that some of this stuff was good, and then also some of it like didn't make sense, and you know, it wasn't like historically accurate, and then they had like, what was it, like one of the Westmores doing his makeup, where that is like a crucial part of his history, is that he did his own makeup.
Yeah,
like, nothing else, we got to get that right.
I like the movie for what it is, but as a piece of historical document, it's lacking so much.
Yeah. I think also, like, for me, what's super intriguing is that you have to really hunt to find out actual facts about him. Like, you know, he's not on like, you know, like everything, it was so long ago, and he was in so many films, and a lot of them are missing, just gone. I mean, he had such an incredible work ethic, just like go. It seems like it didn't matter what the film was. It was like he wanted to work. He would do other things, not just, you know, actually he would be helping out on set and doing things. It's like that theater mentality, like let's get the shot, you know.
Hey kids, let's put on a show. Yeah.
Exactly. And he also used a lot of his lighting techniques. He learned from his theater days, like dealing with shadows and like casting dramatic shadows on himself. Like he was in charge on, for example, again, Phantom of the Opera. He directed those scenes and was in charge of dealing with the different shadows when there were reveals and things like that, which I think is so important for if I can leave any useful information, know your lighting as an actor.
Oh, sure.
You're able to feel the light.
Yeah, find your light for sure. I've done a little bit of acting in my day, not nearly as much as you or my wife or anybody else, but I know that much at least. So,
yeah, you have to, right? You've got to be aware of that.
for sure. And you mentioned he did so many types of movies. I think as monster kids, sometimes we get so tunnel visioned on the horror movies, but he did so much that you can learn different things from. He did Westerns, he did dramas, he did all these other movies that some of them are still available. Track them down, watch them. And that's one of the things that we try to do here on Monster Kid Radio as well, shine a light on some of the more obscure movies that people may not have an opportunity to watch because they don't have it in their collection at home, or it's not showing up on YouTube 1,000 different ways. Go search out some of his other stuff. There's some really good movies out there.
Oh, totally. And I remember what I was going to say before is that there weren't unions for makeup. He was literally writing the book on what you can achieve in practical physical effects and camera tricks and things like that. I mean, it's incredible to me that not only was he an amazing actor, I mean, that would have been enough. Just him acting alone, not having to do anything with the makeup, if that was the only legacy he was leaving behind, that would be more than enough to ensure that he was never forgotten. But putting on that he's doing his makeup, that he's researching the costumes, all of this stuff is just so radical. Mm-hmm. While they were just kind of making up the film business, this was all new stuff back then.
Right.
Which is crazy. But I guess in Hollywood, every project, you make it up, right?
Make it up as you go. Well, you tell me. You're making lots of movies. You're very busy doing stuff on your own and working with your husband on different things. And you got a movie currently you're touring with right now. When it comes to all the movies that you're making these days, what lessons do you take from the silent films or the Chaney films, and how do you apply them to something like Bloody Bridget?
I mean, I guess just getting the mood across physically. I'm a really physical because of the dance. I express myself very physically. I love that aspect of what we do. Ricky, my husband, Richard, he writes for me. So luckily I can kind of help I think, we collaborate on stuff. He'll come out with a character and maybe I'll tweak it just a little bit. I mean, I kind of tweak all of the characters that I play. So to make it more me, I mean, any actor does that. Sometimes the language doesn't fit in your mouth the right way. It's you need to just rustle it a little bit and make it your own so that you can give an authentic performance. For Bloody Bridget, I played two characters. Oh, pretty much. It was Bridget O'Brien, who's this down and out kind of very struggling artist, burlesque dancer in the Valley. And then she gets these powers and turns into a Valentine vampire. We call it Demon Bridget. And so I definitely wanted to show differences in the two characters. I mean, they look totally opposite and different, but I also wanted to be physically more menacing and more embody that and loom over my victims, not to give anything away.
Well, and I want to comment on that, and it kind of goes back to what we were talking about with Lon Chaney. When you're in the film and you're playing regular, I guess, Bridget, and as you're transforming into the other Bridget, it's not just somebody doing something in post-production to make your voice sound different. Your body physically changes its stance. You do something with your body to indicate that this is now a different entity altogether. And that's something that's very Chaney-esque, to kind of use the body to kind of communicate what you're trying to communicate without speaking, without doing anything other than just being.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Thank you. I'm so glad that that's coming across because, when you're a creator, a lot of the work you're doing by yourself or behind closed doors or on set, and you don't get this feedback all the time because everybody else is working hard to get the shots done. So I've been loving everybody's interpretation and just what resonated with them. And I love to hear that the Chaney ass came across, because that's the goal for me. My life goal is to just be more like Lon Chaney. As goofy as it sounds, but my kind of catchphrase is some say, what would Jesus do? I say, what would Lon Chaney Sr. do? And that gets me through. Like, whenever I'm feeling down, okay, what would he do in this situation? Like, how can we make this, because like dealing, not to like go on a tangent, but I'm an independent artist. I work in a lot of indie horrors. I understand the low budget, no budget struggle, and I'm like a quick worker. And it's like, you don't always have time to like get into the character, or you don't always get a rehearsal on set. Sometimes it's like, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, and it's like, you've got to be grounded in yourself. And there's been a few times, especially on Bloody Bridget, because I was almost in every single scene. And most days we shot it in like 14 days back to back.
Wow.
And I was lucky if I got to sit down at all. I think I only sat down for like costume or makeup, Some days were like really intense assaults happening in the scenes, or weird, sad scenes, and then till I'm going to murder somebody. So having that range in one day, and most of the time I didn't even get a chance to like rehearse, because like the actors who were my scene partners were so wonderful. But they would get to rehearse while I was changing. And so I would run in, and they had to like help carry me through the scenes. If you worked in like indie horror, you know that.
Well, I watched the movie this afternoon. I appreciate the opportunity to screen it here at home. And it definitely was unlike anything that I was expecting. I had no idea what to expect when I put it in. I tried to stay away from a lot of reviews and other interviews and that sort of thing, because I wanted to just kind of hit me raw. I didn't want to have any preconceptions. And it is, like I said, unlike anything that I was expecting. I had no idea what I was in for. It is definitely a wild ride, that's for sure. But I mean that in a good way.
Thank you for watching, and I'm so glad that you loved it. I mean, it's a total wacky, insane, but really fun film. Ricky and I, it's a completely self-financed film, and so there were no suits in the way. It's a totally unadulterated Richard Elfman classic. We let him go nuts. And if you're a fan of his films like Forbidden Zone or Shrunken Heads or something, he's kind of a crazy guy.
It's a racy, absurdist, campy cult classic in the making. It's just all over the place, and there are a lot of really fun bits. And the finale, I'm not going to say what it is because I don't want to spoil it, but those who know me in my personal life know that I thought I was going to be one of a number of different things when I grew up, and the finale of this really kind of spoke to me.
Don't question, just accept it. Just let it happen. No, I was going to say, like, I hope you partaked in, like, a drink or something, because, like, this is a total party film. And it's been so wonderful seeing it with a live audience, because they are so, like, outrageously, like, loving the film and screaming and laughing and stuff. And so basically, most people, I feel like right now, a lot of people aren't used to bad guys being bad guys, like seeing bad guys actually act bad, and you kind of need that in film to get the point across, like, this guy's a bad guy, let's let him be bad. So we do that. We let him be terrible. And then, they get what they get.
Everything that he did was very in character for that character. And it helped to define his character, for better or worse. And yeah, like you said, he got what he deserved.
Yeah, and the audiences are always so happy when I, let's say, like, get my revenge and justice.
So the reaction's been pretty good, it sounds like. I was telling you before we actually started that I had to miss the Portland show, but I saw pictures. A couple of my friends went, and one of them got to be up on stage with you, from what I understand. And I saw pictures from the event, and it just looked like a lot of fun. What is a screening of Bloody Bridget like when you're along for the ride?
Well, we've been doing a little tour with Bloody Bridget. So when we can, we like to fly out and create these wild, immersive free show experiences. And so Ricky, he's a professional Latin percussionist. And so he'll get a band, like a local band together. And then I do an insane bloody burlesque number where, not to give too much away, but I literally have a victim and drag them on stage and rip their chest open and eat their beating heart in front of the audience. So it's a wild time.
Family-friendly show,
Well, yeah, I guess. But yeah, Portland was great. Our friends Julia and Dylan of the Yule Fest, we did a special screening. It was a triple feature. So we had Forbidden Zone, Aliens, Clowns, and Geeks, and Bloody Bridget. And so I did a couple performances. We got like a bigger, Richard and I like to travel with our films. So our kind of like shtick is that we put on crazy pre-shows. We call them like the Elfman Live pre-shows, and that's like the basic title, but each one is kind of different with how we set our multimedia show. And so sometimes I'll perform a couple numbers and I'll have some local burlesque artists, in the show with me, give them a number, and then Ricky will do the music. And then sometimes if it's just a Bloody Bridget screening at a festival, then it's just me, It's almost like, okay, so we're also known for our dinner parties. So Rick is a grill master. And so he likes to grill for our friends. And so we'll have a big party and do like a performance. It's like an underground art salon. And so kind of like these events, these immersive events are kind of like coming over to our place, like we co-produce every single little aspect from the music and the lobby to like the themed cocktails at the concession stand, like everything. We have our little hands in everywhere just to make it a totally unique experience.
That sounds really fun. I'm so disappointed. I mean, I wouldn't have traded what I was doing, for anything, but I'm so disappointed I missed the Portland show because it just sounds like a great time. But listeners, you don't have to miss the show, especially if you're in the Pacific Northwest, because the Washington premiere is happening later this month at the Make Believe. Is that a festival? Make Believe Seattle?
Yes, Make Believe Seattle Film Festival. And and so Ricky and I are coming out to do one of our wild shows. So that's Saturday the 23rd.
Correct.
Very soon.
Yeah, Saturday the 23rd. I will make sure there's a link in the show notes to the website so you can download the film schedule and go buy a ticket. If you're in the Seattle area, you don't want to miss it. It sounds like it's going to be a great time, and it's playing at 8:15 Saturday night. So make sure you get in there to check that out and check out the other festivals activities as well. Let them know that Monster Kid Radio sent you. But you also said it's showing somewhere else that same weekend. If you want to see it, sans Anastasia and Ricky or Richard Elfman, go to Horror Hound Weekend.
Yes, over at Horror Hound, we're doing a screening. We won't be there, but we did record a special intro video. So that'll be fun. That'll open up the film.
Is there a website or somewhere people can go to kind of see where this movie might be playing next, where you might show up with it?
Yeah, well, we have bloodybridget.com, but we're actually most active on our social media accounts. So it's Richard Elfman and Anastasia Elfman on Facebook, and then our films all have their own pages on Facebook, and then we're both on Instagram, and it's confusing, but I'm under my stage name, Dahlia DeMont, on Instagram, and then Richard is just under his name, and then all the films have their own pages. But we try to promote them and include ticket links and all the information that you need.
I'll make sure there's links to all of this in the show notes so that everybody can kind of follow and see what's going on. As far as what you've got coming up with Bloody Bridget, you're on tour. Do you have anything coming up in the future outside of Bloody Bridget that you want to talk about or can talk about?
Oh, man. Well, I'm going to be in a new slasher film, but I'm not allowed to talk about it right now.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, I know. I wish. I can't wait until I've got the okay to start, because I love promoting. It's It's a friend's new slasher film, and I generally work with the same creators, so, anyways, you'll probably be able, if you're a fan of what I do, you'll probably be able to figure out who's got a movie coming up. And then I'm working on writing a new horror film, so that'll be fun. That's in the beginning stages. So I guess there's not much to talk about that other than I'm doing it.
Well, that's great, though. And I'll make sure people, again, check out the social media links that she just mentioned a second ago to keep up with it, because I'm assuming you're going to talk about it there. You said you love promoting, so
totally, yeah.
Pay attention to that. How do you think Lon Chaney Sr. would handle things like social media?
Well, it kind of depends on where he was in his career. I mean, ironically, right now, when you're not Brad Pitt or somebody, you kind of need that to get noticed and get seen and kind of like market yourself. I mean, if I didn't have to have it, I probably wouldn't have one, but I get a ton of my film gigs or just creative gigs just from friends on Facebook or Instagram, so it's been helpful for me. For Lon Senior, I mean, maybe in the beginning of his career, but probably not towards, the height of his success, because he was like the most successful guy. I feel like he's the father of horror to me, creating that in a way.
There's a bit of film, a 1925 studio tour from the MGM lots from, 1925. And there's a sequence where they're showing like all the stars of MGM and everybody's smiling and waving at the camera. But Lon Chaney Sr.'s got his back to the camera and he just kind of looks over his shoulder quickly. You just get a glimpse of him and that's it. I'm wondering how that Lon Chaney would reconcile the need to do social media these days, trying not to reveal too much about his face because, it's not his face we're looking for. We're looking for the makeup and the acting and everything else. You want to have a little bit of that mystery, but again, social media and how the independent horror scene and just the creative scene in general works, you've got to have that presence. I'm trying to reconcile how both of those would work if he was around today.
Well, I think also it's interesting if you think about it in the time period, it seems like he was on the cutting edge of new technology. It was like he was traveling with a vaudeville-like troupe that turns into him being in film. That's new. You know what I mean? And then it turns into him doing a talkie, which is new. You know what I mean? And I feel like, obviously, it's a tragedy that his life was cut short so young. Who knows what else he would have. It's like with social media, it's a new tech. It's a new way to get the art out there. I mean, not everything is like an influencer doing makeup. Like I'm seeing some really creative, wonderful art, not just from friends, from other people that, in ways like kind of inspire me to like, oh, okay, so they're doing that. I can do something like that. I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, I'm a podcaster, so of course I'm on the internet and I've got the social media thing. I'm also an author and, I'm doing social media to promote my books and that sort of thing. So I'm totally understand. So I get it. I don't know if the listeners do, but you and I get it.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot.
Yeah.
My husband, Richie, he has his first ever horror novel.
Oh,
and
okay.
We're working on doing the audio version, and so I'm going to be a main character on that. So that's a project I can talk about. We just recorded Joe Dante. We're getting some other horror icons, and his son, Bloody Elfman, did the main character. So it's really fun.
Is it going to be done as like an audio drama piece, or is it a straight reading and you're just coming in to do different voices for the characters?
I think definitely like a trauma, the way that Ricky's having everybody read. So it might be like a callback to like the old radio dramas almost.
I love old time radio, so that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
What's the name of the novel?
Flamazel of Sabrim.
Okay.
Like a Jewish vampire tale. It's crazy. It's great.
Okay. I will add it to my to-read list. And link in the show notes for that as well. Listeners, check that out. I'm looking at it on Amazon right now.
You're just going to have like this whole list, this huge paragraph of all the links.
Well, we want to support our own though, too. I mean, as monster kids, we're becoming a more and more of a rare breed. The people who love these classic monster movies, we love them. And I feel like sometimes it's harder to find our tribe the older we get. So we want to support each other, and so I want to support your movies, and I want to support this novel, and I want to support all this stuff. So that's why I wanted to have you on the show.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I feel like right now is a really great time with horror, and I feel like a lot of people are learning about the classic horrors. I mean, right now we have, but maybe it's like just me being in Hollywood and stuff and dealing with like all the people that we're dealing with are all like, in entertainment and stuff too. But so our daughter just turned 16 and she's like expressed an interest in watching all the old classics. So that's been fun to like rewatch those with her. Cause I forget, cause I grew up on silent, like pre-code horror, all the classic film noirs, all the classic, like Hitchcock, all kinds of stuff. I really love like horror comedies, like Death Becomes Her, all that kind of like really like heavy practical effects driven horror too. Our daughter, she's grown up with it around her and grown up on set, I would say maybe a little bit jaded, but so I always get excited when she wants to watch something, and so yeah, so we're kind of going through all of that and exposing her to like horrors that like I feel she'll be good with. Like right now, I think her favorite classic is Invisible Man. She loved. For a newer horror is John Carpenter's The Thing.
Those are two solid picks. I don't know if they make a great double feature, but they're solid picks.
Maybe take a break in between.
Yeah. But again,
we're trying to raise her right, like know your film history.
Right. I feel like it's so important to know that. And that's something else that you've talked about you've mentioned it in passing on Facebook, just like knowing your film history and knowing where we come from is so important as we move forward and create new art. Everything's a remix anyway. Everything's kind of inspired by what we've seen before. And by exposing ourselves to all the stuff that's come before, it makes what we make now so much more rich.
Yeah, you need to watch the classic. Watch where their newer films or even older films are getting inspirations from the originals. I mean, it's just insane to me. Okay, so a little bit about me. I'm an older sister. Both of my parents were in the military, like career military. And so I've kind of got like a strong sense of justice and right and wrong. And you need to do your homework. You need to get your stuff done. Also, my whole life in ballet, you earn point shoes. You've got to do all the work. They're not just given to you. It's years of intensive training to be able to even think about being on point shoes. So it's with that kind of like dancer mentality, it always blows my mind when like actors don't know the even like bare necessity, like classics. Like I think what's special about me, and because I know a lot of people like this, a lot of our friends, not every actress or creator or director, not everybody in Hollywood doing this as a career is a fan of movies or TV, or forget, not even a fan of like the genre. So I think it's a huge deal when, like me, when you are a huge fan, like I'm a ride or die horror freak, and I hope it shows.
Well, it definitely comes out in talking to you or being Facebook friends with you or watching your movie. You can see that. And there's an honest appreciation of the genre and in all eras of the genre that comes through. That makes it better, I think, for the viewer or the consumer.
I mean, that's the goal. In the back thing, of course, it's like you want to be authentic to the work that you're trying to convey. But like for me, as like my instrument as an artist, I'm always looking for ways to drop, like I said before, like little Easter eggs or little like homages, trying to do them justice in a way,
Watching Bloody Bridget and during an opening number, towards the beginning of the film, there's one of the dance numbers, and your character Bridget mentions a classic dancer, and I had to stop for a second. It's like, is that a real person? Did she just? Yeah, she just name dropped like a real historical and important figure in American dance history. That's awesome. You can definitely tell that there's this love of what came before that informs what you're doing now. That I thought was cool.
Aw, thank you. Yeah, there's been a couple of films that I've been in where I try to like, I was in something called The Scout, and my character was like naming off, or somebody's character was like naming off all of these Stuart Gordon films and stuff. And we're actually friends with Brian Usnat, who is, like the producer and everything for like Reanimator and stuff. And so like I got his name in there. It's like little things like that, and that same movie, it's like, I'm like classically trained also like in acting. So, Stella Adler, I like to like name drop the like method teachers.
I got to ask you, and if you don't want me to include this in this episode, I don't have to, but at the very, very, very end, coming, Bloody Bridget 2. Is that for real?
I mean, we've got a script. We've got to get this one out first. And like I said, it was like totally self-funded. So it's like there's no taking meetings with like distribution and stuff. We'd like to get some of a little bit back so that we can make the next one.
Sure.
But yeah, I'm excited to see where this character goes and to put more of myself in it. And I feel like there might be like bad guys out there that need a timeout. We need a hard part, let's say. And
that's no way to put it. They need a timeout.
Yeah, I feel like Bloody Bridget has some more stuff to do in Van Nuys. We got to clean up the streets and have more heart-to-hearts with these bad guys.
Heart-to-hearts with these bad... Wow. All right, well...
Yeah, I just came up with that. I'm going to use it.
Hey, put it on the movie poster, whatever.
There we go.
As I told you before we even started doing this earlier today, I feel like we could end up chatting about Lon Chaney Sr., classic horror, monster movies, whatever, for hours, but I'm not going to take up your entire evening. Again, I want people to check out what you've got going on with Bloody Bridget. Follow Anastasia and Richard Elfman on Instagram and all the socials. Again, link in the show notes for all of that. I'm hoping that eventually Bloody Bridget does get a home distribution deal after you're done doing the tour. When that happens, let me know and I'll let my audience know as well. I want to make sure people have a chance to support what you guys are doing.
Yeah. Thank you. And thank you for giving me this opportunity to kind of fangirl about Lon Chaney Sr. and horror. And this is like, you said you see my posts. This is what I like to complain about. Like, we need more actual fans of horror to be able to like chit chat. I listen to a lot of horror podcasts and I don't necessarily want to hear all the like laboratory numbers about this and that. I want to hear somebody who's like excited about horror and a huge fan and oh my god, like Death Becomes Her is a perfect film. I just want to hear about all this stuff. So thank you for giving me the opportunity, and then also to like promote my projects and that's kind of like, I love supporting indie artists. We do that with our touring shows. It's like I feel like one of the main big things is that we get to support local talent and we also get to support theater, which is I'm not religious, but that is my church, is a cinema. So yeah, thank you.
I know this was a real kind of like high level chat about Lon Chaney. Next time I have you on, we'll maybe pick one or two movies and just really deep dive and nerd out together. How about that?
Oh my God, please have me back. I love doing that. It sounds so goofy, but I love chatting about films and like deep diving. And it's almost our birthday, so this works out perfect.
There you go. Like I said, I'm going to go rewatch The Unholy 3. Maybe I'll have you come back on and we'll talk about that movie a little bit more in depth.
Yes, and actually, funny little story.
Yeah.
We were guests at Famous Monsters, their film festival and convention, and we brought Bloody Bridget. We went for one screening. They had us do it twice, which is amazing. And Lon Chaney, who is the great-grandson of Lon Chaney Sr., was there, and he came to my screening and to my performance, which is insane. And he's invited like me to come look at their archives and history, and I want to use him in a film. And it's just like, it's so crazy to me. I don't know. I feel like we like pull things into like from the universe, and I've totally been shouting out like Lon Chaney Sr., and it's just funny how that I didn't even know he was going to be there. So that's totally wild, and I almost fainted.
Oh, that's amazing. I can imagine trying to keep it together and not.
Oh, well, I mean, I don't get goo eyes over like all like the stars or whatever, but there's some people where like they definitely made an impact on me, and him being there, and then just he's so into supporting his family history and getting that out there. And he has a new film called Devil's Den or something like that that's going on the festival circuit as well. And it might just be me, but I think that he is like the spitting image of Lon Sr. and it's totally radical. And he likes to dress up in the makeup, and we did like a photo op of him as Eric in Phantom of the Opera. It was nuts.
That brings us to the end of this episode of Monster Kid Radio. Huge thanks to Kenny and Mark and Anastasia for being part of the show this week. As I told Anastasia, I'm going to make sure there's links in the show notes to everything that we've talked about. But if you're sitting at a computer right now, go to bloodybridget.com, and that's going to get you to the main website for their touring movie. And if you can see them live somewhere, I bet it is an amazing experience if the videos and the pictures I've seen are any indication. Well, you heard her. She's so excited about it. How can that enthusiasm not become infectious? Now, I did mean what I said when I told her the movie is unlike anything I've ever seen. It is not what I expected. It is a little racy, so younger monster kids, probably not the intended audience here, just so you know. And it does get a little bloody and graphic in spots, but that's what the movie is. And it is such an absurd trip. I hope you enjoy it. And if you did enjoy it, let me know. I'd love to hear from you about this episode of Monster Kid Radio or any of the previous 650 plus episodes of Monster Kid Radio.
Have something you'd like to share with Monster Kid Radio? You can email the podcast at monsterkidradio@gmail.com, or you can call and leave a voicemail at 360-524-2484.
Of course, this contact information is available over on our website at monsterkidradio.net, where you're going to find links to our Facebook page, our Facebook group, our Twitter, or X, I guess is what they're calling it these days, Discord, Patreon, and Reddit. Everything you need to know about the podcast is right there, including links to everything we've mentioned, like Bloody Bridget, like Anastasia's social media pages, and everything else. So go over there. And if you're going to shop through Amazon, please consider using our Amazon affiliate link, because it really helps us out in the long run, because it helps support the show. I do want to let you know about a couple of things coming up. First of all, there is a screening happening in the Portland, Oregon area at the Hollywood Theater of Dawn of the Dead from the 70s, the original film, which I absolutely love. Is it outside the typical Monster Kid Radio wheelhouse? Well, it might have been in the past, but things are kind of changing here at Monster Kid Radio, and darn it, I want to talk about Dawn of the Dead. So I will be bringing my recorder when I go to see this movie on Sunday, April 14th at 2:30 p.m. I do have a Facebook event page set up for this. If you're in the Portland, Oregon area, I would love to see you there. So maybe look for me. Look for the guy wearing a Dawn of the Dead shirt, hoping that it comes through in time. If not, just look for the tallest guy in the room. Looks like he's having the most fun and wielding a portable audio recorder. I'm going to make an entire episode out of this. This should be a blast for me. This movie from 1978 is a very, very important movie to me in terms of my development as a creative, as a filmmaker. I kind of dabbled with the idea of making movies all the way back in grade school in the late 80s, mid 80s. Gosh, I'm old. Anyway, I was writing scripts for my G.I. Joe action figures, and I had it in my head I'd make like a series of stop motion G.I. Joe shorts. Well, that never happened. And then in junior high school, I met a guy named Jared who looked at me and said, "Hey, you want to make a movie?" And we did. And we just started playing with our video camera in the backyard with our friends and making movies ever since, and then went off to film school and all that. So, there was the foundation there, but it wasn't until I saw Dawn of the Dead when how movies are actually made finally clicked into place for me. This movie is so special and so important to me as a developing storyteller, and I know that if I ever go back to the dream of making movies, I'm going to take all the lessons that I learned watching Dawn of the Dead so many times over the years and bring them with me to set. I would love to see you there. And, because we didn't really get a chance to do a big 50th birthday party for me here, not that I want to throw my own party or anything, I was in Kuwait when I turned 50. So to kind of catch up a little bit, there is a pizza place right next door to the Hollywood Theater. We're going to try to meet up a little before the film, have some pizza together, just hang out. It's not like a huge organized event. We're not renting space, but if you're in the area, you want to grab a slice of pizza, hang out with Beth and her goofy-looking husband, I would love to see you. And then I would love to watch Dawn of the Dead with you at the Hollywood Theater. This is the 45th anniversary edition Apparently it's been restored, cleaned up. I don't know how it's going to look, but I cannot wait to see it. The last time I saw this movie actually was during its 3D run not too long ago, a couple years back. And I remember that for two reasons. One, I'd never seen it on the big screen before, so even though it was 3D and it was a little dim because that's how the 3D process worked, it was cool to see, but it's also where I am almost 100% sure I picked up COVID. So hopefully this time around, nobody gets sick, we all enjoy Dawn of the Dead, and we have a grand time. Again, link in the show notes to the Facebook event page. If you're not a Facebook user, well, just show up. April 14th, the 2:30 p.m. showing. Speaking of showings, again, Bloody Bridget's playing up at the Make Believe Film Festival in Seattle this weekend and at Horror Hound Weekend this weekend. If you're there, especially up in Seattle, and you get a chance to see or talk with Anastasia Elfman, tell her that you heard about the show and her on Monster Kid Radio. It really does us a solid when the people that are on Monster Kid Radio know that we're helping to spread the word for them and let people know about what their events are and their projects and that sort of thing. It helps us out, and it allows us to continue to help people like her out. Or you, if you're a creative and you've got a project coming up that you think Monster Kid Radio might be interested in, drop me a line and let me know. What's coming up next week on the show? Hey, you know what? If all goes well, this Sunday I am meeting up with my old friend Matthew Rashleigh. Matt is somebody that I met in film school. He is one of my oldest friends, and he and I are going to meet up and we're going to talk about the year in monster movies, the year being 1954. 1954 was a watershed year for monster movies, classic and sometimes not so classic. Some really good films. Y'all know my favorite film of all time. It came out that year, but it's not the only monster movie that came out that's worth talking about. There are a lot, and Matt and I are going to talk about those on the next episode of Monster Kid Radio. So that is coming up, and then I can let you know the week after that. Beth and I are going to sit down and we're going to talk about Doctor Who. Classic Doctor Who. I've not watched a lot of Doctor Who. I watched the Fox TV movie from the 90s, and I've watched the two Peter Cushing films, and then a few clips online, and that is it. So I'm excited to finally fill my Who hole as she takes me onto a journey into Whoville in 2 weeks here on Monster Kid Radio. After that, well, I've got some ideas in the works, and I'll keep you posted online.
Monster Kid Radio is a Team Death production. All original content of Monster Kid Radio is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 unported license. You can learn more about Team Death or other projects like Death Designs, Mail Order Zombie, Monster Kid Writer, and more at www.teamdeath.com. Remember, death is spelled D-E-T-H. That's teamdeath.com. Please rate and review Monster Kid Radio wherever you download your favorite podcasts.
Mysterious Signals is copyright 2023 Los Twangheads. It's from their album The Dark Surf Experience. You can find them at lostwangheads.bandcamp.com. Of course, there'll be a link in the show notes. Go check them out. Check out the entire album and let them know that you heard about them here on Monster Kid Radio. My name is Derek M. Cook. I'll talk to everybody next week. We are back to a weekly schedule. Ciao.